Hi, I'm Becky Douglas. I'm the founder of Rising Star Outreach, and I'd like to share some ideas with you today. I've learned in life that everyone has to go through some pretty difficult trials. No one gets a free pass to escape. I think that sometimes the hardest part about these trials is just simply not knowing how long they're going to last, not knowing how they're going to turn out. Those are the times that we have to dig deep to find the strength and the determination and the conviction that we need to keep going when the times are really tough. I'm reminded of a time early in the history of Rising Star that was sort of like this. We needed to get an SCRA license because in India you can't bring money in to fund a charity unless you have an SCRA license. For us, that's really tough because we work with people that have leprosy, and in India, leprosy carries a dreadful stigma. In fact, some people even feel like people that have leprosy have been cursed by God for doing some terrible thing in their life, and it's a punishment. Because of the stigma, it's really hard to raise money in India to care for these people. They're pretty much ostracized and thrown out of society. There is this opportunity that the government gives you during that 3-year period that if you want to apply for one time to bring foreign funding in for one specific purpose, you can do that. And we fortunately were able to get that, and we got enough money in that we could buy land and build a little school. And then we saved enough of that we could run that school for 3 years and feed the children and pay the teachers and everything that needed to happen. But then as time went on, costs rose a lot faster than we had expected. We were finding that it's going to be a real challenge to get to the end of that 3-year period. Now, we had applied for our SCRA license before that period ended so that the day we were done, we could get the right to bring foreign funding in. But we felt like we were limping to the finish line because we cut the kids' rations, we cut the teachers' rations. Finally, we had to ask the teachers to teach without pay. We didn't exactly know how to feed the kids. It got to be really scary. The deadline came and we didn't receive our license from the government. By now, I was in America and I received an email one day from our director. His name is Gopi, and he just said, "Becky, I need to send the children home because they're starving. Tell me what to do." And I remember getting that email and just thinking, oh my gosh, we can't send those kids home because if we do, we won't have a functioning school. So even if we got the license, we couldn't receive it. And everything we'd worked for, all those years of work, all those hopes and dreams of the kids and their parents that they were going to get educated would all just be dashed. I mean, none of these kids came from families that had ever had an education. They lived in the slums of the leprosy colonies, and there was no way out without this education. I just thought, how can I tell him to send those kids home, but how can I tell him to keep those kids and have them starve? So I remember just staring at my computer. Slowly, I just typed, "Do not send those kids home." But I thought, my gosh, I've got to get to India. If we're going to have to send those kids home, I need to be there. So I caught the next flight to India. I just felt driven to be there with them and with their families. So by the time I get there, I'm pretty tired. I arrived in Chennai, got to my hotel at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, if I could just get even 2 hours of sleep before I go out, that might be helpful. At 8 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Amy Antonelli, our executive director, and she said, "Becky, this is an emergency. You need to get out to Rising Star immediately." I jumped in the car. It was 2 hours drive to get out to Rising Star Outreach. And as soon as I arrived and our car pulled up, I could see that like all 150 kids and the teachers and everybody was standing around the front of the school. And so I got out of my car and 2 little girls ran up. Each one grabbed one of my hands, and they pulled me as fast as they could run towards the steps. And as I ran up the steps and they pulled me down that hall, I could see the banner and it read, "Congratulations on the SCRA." And I went, "What? Did we get the SCRA?" And all the kids started laughing and jumping up and down and clapping and yes, Auntie. And by then I was crying, and I said, "What? How did we get when?" And one of the older boys, the older student said, "Becky, Auntie," he said, "in India we have a wonderful tradition of fasting. It was taught to us by Mahatma Gandhi." And he said, "So yesterday we got all the students together and we said, why don't we fast and ask God to give us the license?" And so they did. And he said, "This morning we got a call from the government office and they gave us the license and said, we'll receive the official one in just a few days." That was a trial that was the hardest thing that I could remember having gone through for a long, long time, because every day was agonizing. But it turned out okay. Now, not every trial turns out okay. That doesn't always happen. Most of us have had an experience where we've gone through a hard time, we've come through it. So now when I go through hard times, I kind of think back to that incredibly difficult experience, and I draw strength from that. Sometimes we can gain strength by looking back in our lives to those kinds of times, and hopefully we will have a happy ending. Now, I don't know how long COVID-19 is going to last, this pandemic. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I think that each of us, as we dig deep within ourselves and find the faith and the courage to go forward, can not only endure, but we can experience meaning during this time and peace. Wishing you all a peaceful and a happy and a healthy time as we get through this together.